as they say.
Hey, Lawrence. Well, thanks for doing this. We met through the Mankind Project, and since I started my work with the Mankind Project for the last 5 years, I've got more interested and engaged with this idea of leadership, and as someone in leadership in the Mankind Project, just really would love to hear about your experiences for today. But maybe to start, maybe you could just sort of give a little bit of an intro about who you are and how you began in leadership.
Yeah, okay. So I'm Lawrence Johns, and I'm currently the outreach director of the Mankind Project in the UK and Ireland. And previously to me getting involved in that, my background is quite sort of entrepreneurial, really, as director of a prestigious rare books company from about the age of about 25, become a director of that very quickly. And then around 2005, I set off on my own doing that. And that went very successfully for a while until the kind of collapse of 2008, 2009. That kind of set that back. And I decided at that point, because I had a young family, that the more entrepreneurial side of things, I needed a little bit more stability for a while around that. And that was at the same time that the Mankind Project was becoming a charity, around about that time, a few years after. And they really sort of needed someone to guide them through that process, to get involved. And I thought it was important at that time, they needed someone who knew the organisation. And because we had this weird thing going on where it was an established organisation and it was becoming something new. And that was why I kind of put myself forward for that role and said, okay, I know the organisation. I'd been involved for like 15 years at that time or something, and was in leadership position there. And I had an entrepreneurial background. And I knew that as a small charity that wasn't massively resourced, we were going to need a bit more than that than maybe they thought.
Somebody who can do a lot of different jobs, get their hands dirty,
Yeah.
not be siloed.
And if you need to do the emails. And if you need to meet someone in government, you can meet someone in government. And that was always my skill set, really, was I could always, very practical, and drop me in a boardroom and I was okay. So I kind of thought that was the role that was needed. And so I presented myself to manage us through that. That was about 10 years ago now. And that's what I've been doing kind of professionally, as well as I have my own clients who I work with, many in senior leadership positions. And as well as that time, I've also kind of gone through the leadership track more within the Mankind Project. So I'm a co-leader of the weekends that we do now, and I'm a leader trainer. So I train the future leaders within the Mankind Project internationally.
And so, what is the Mankind Project for those that don't know?
Good point. The Mankind Project it calls itself a brotherhood of training organisations that help men connect with leadership in their lives, emotional authenticity, and life purpose. So it's a men's personal development organisation. It's actually the oldest men's specific personal development program in the world.
Brilliant. I mean, I know the impact it's had on my life. I think one of those things, some of the stuff that the Mankind Project does, I think has been central to my journey in leadership as well. So, I started off, I guess, in leadership really when I started a business in Spain, started a media business in Spain. And I had no idea, really. I was a terrible leader. I was definitely a tyrant, lots of shouting, micromanaging, always focused on what was wrong as opposed to what was right, and zero vision Zero inspiration, I would say. It was all about, hustling and making things work, survival.
Do you think, when you look back on that, do you think that was because of the, sorry to jump in there, but do you think that was because that was what was needed at that time? Or was that the model of leadership that you had? Because this is one of the things I come up with quite a lot now, is that when I'm working with men around leadership, what I come up against is their idea of what a leader should be like. And if they're not doing that, as much as I can try and say, listen, that's counterproductive, I think, no, I need to go in and bust balls. That's what leaders do.
Yeah, it was definitely the model within the organisation. That's for sure. It was. Many media organisations, sales organisations. It's Glengarry, Glen Ross type thing, right? And but it was a model, and as I think many people might find, there's lack of training.
Yeah.
Lack of instruction, lack of understanding for anybody what leadership is. And I think, the organisation that I was working with, we'd all grown up, done it the same way. The people who were above me had just started the business, just got going, and it grew and been very successful at it, grew very, very quickly. So they didn't know.
Yeah.
Right. But then what changed was leaving my business that I set up in Spain, the team around me, where we had that personal bond, right? Where maybe my behavior was not so jarring because we knew each other, they knew me, they made allowances for my idiosyncrasies and how I behaved because we had a relationship. But then when I transplanted into a different organization in Brazil, like within the same company, I started running Latin America. All of a sudden I didn't have my team.
Yeah.
And I already knew that I needed to shift I wanted to make a difference, a change to my leadership style, to the way I was managing. But I didn't really know how.
Yeah.
So juggled there, then moved to Miami, had another team, created that organization, so it had a little bit more leeway, but didn't really find the way I wanted to lead until I looked at myself.
Yeah.
Until I got in connection with who I am, which is through and.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things there, and one of them I'll come back to. But like, I often think within leadership, certainly my journey within leadership, if I look specifically at my journey of leadership within, say, the Mankind Project, for example, I always struggled with leadership. Even when I was sort of entrepreneurial, there was a sort of part of me in entrepreneurial situations where I always felt like I was blagging. It. And I think for me personally, it was because, like working class boy, I've got an East London accent. And from a child, that was not what leaders looked like. When I looked around and I saw it in the press, I saw politicians, I saw things. They didn't sound and act like me. They didn't go to the schools I went to. It wasn't there. So there was a point that I always felt like either I was blagging it and had to lean into that more and came over as the sort of wide boy, wheeler and dealer kind of shoots from the hip kind of guy, or I'd massively overcompensate, and just hold back. And I think my biggest journey, if people say what was the biggest thing you had to learn in leadership, it was to put down a model of what I thought leadership looked like. That's why I asked that first question, were you mimicking what you thought leadership looked like? And to go, there is no what a leader is like. There is no Lawrence as a leader. There's just Lawrence leading. I had to learn to be who I am, whether I'm leading or not.
Allowing yourself to be you.
Allow myself to be me. Allowing myself, because like when I work with men now, people will say like, do you do personal coaching or professional coaching. And I just go, to me, there is absolutely no difference. It's like there's just me, and everywhere I go, there I am. And any insecurities I have, they're going to show up. Same way at home, they're going to show up in the workplace. My talents, the talents I have outside of leadership, are going to be the talents I bring to leadership. If I allow them, if I drop the model and allow me to go, what does my flavour of leadership taste like? If I can really bring that, then I'm going to drop the fear of being exposed. I'm going to drop all of that because it is me.
Yeah.
And that was the massive part of the journey, I think.
Yeah, so I'm sort of reflecting back now, and was it me? Did I think I fitted within that organisation perhaps because it was partly maybe that was how I learned to show up in the world. But there's so I've had a slightly different background, right? So I grew up in Spain for quite a lot of my childhood, and then went to boarding school, and there is that, again, not fitting in, that imposter syndrome. Of course, brown skin, went to boarding school in New York, definitely was people let me know that I was different there. And I think that there's been that need within me, to fit in, to belong. And so so more looking towards the outside to fit in, to conform. So I'm inclined to say that that's perhaps what I was doing with my leadership, was more looking to fit what I believed leadership should look like within that organisation. And incompetence, I think, of course. That's not knowing how
not having done it yet properly.
Not having done it, and just not being very good at it.
Yeah. And that's an interesting point, because that was that second point I wanted to pick up on. I said there's 2 points. One thing I'm noticing quite a lot at the moment when I work with organisations, particularly organisations where they've left the founding stage now, and they've either got more serious investment or they've got a bigger team, and they've got whatever, is sometimes the role of not just the leaders, but the people that were the founders change so much that the position changes. Like it's almost like it can become untenable. And like to sort of give an example of that, I'm working with some people at the moment, and 3 of them set this company up, and it's done very well. And now they've got senior management, all that stuff in, and it's almost like the man who's holding the CEO position now, who's still one of the founders. It's almost like he can't find a place for the original team anymore, because their skill set was fitted a founding bit. What we were talking about before. It was the person who could, they could put together an investment deck if they needed to. They could also spend 18 hours packing boxes if suddenly you called them up and said, we need to pack the boxes, right? Or, do you know what? There's no problem that more sales can't solve. Let's just be a sales team for the next 2 weeks, get some sales in. And you build that sort of camaraderie in that stage. You've all got those multifaceted, I call them like Swiss Army people, like you're a Swiss Army person, you can do a bit of it all. But then you move up, and sometimes as the founder becomes the CEO, or even if they've just got management in, that type of leadership and even that type of team member, you find yourself going, where does that fit now? Because now we need someone who's just a salesperson. Now we need someone who, and you're like, well, he's a pretty good salesperson, but he can also pick up the camera and edit you a few clips if you need. You don't need that as much.
Well, really interestingly, that's exactly how I planned it when we launched Severin.
Right.
So I knew that I was the startup guy.
Right.
I'm really good. I can, learn a new industry, new business, love it. Right? How does this actually work? Put it together in a spreadsheet. Do the financial forecasting, bring a team together, hire the right people, identify who are the right people for this stage of the business, because we need more people who are more Swiss Army knife, more flexible,
Yeah.
and get it up and running. And I was actually reminded by the guy who's now running the business. He said, "Dan, you actually told me in my initial interview that my goal is to make one of the employees CEO.
Yeah.
And so I leave, in 2 to 3 years." That's exactly how it mapped out. And so it is this learning about myself, my role, what I can do, what I'm good at. But another thing that I think is coming from the change from my leadership, even since Sevran actually, is this idea of vision. And that came on the training we did with the Libyan mythodrama, right? Is really just sort of crystallized for me. It shifted the idea of values and vision being a box checking exercise.
Yes.
To being the essence of leadership.
Yeah.
It's creating a direction for people to move towards without telling them the steps, without telling them what to do.
Yeah. And that, the values part being really important, because it also, to be that kind of leader, you've got to, and you've got to be able to stick to the values, either your own values or the agreed values of the organisation, to the level where it could be your own demise. Right, I think you've got to be willing to do that. It made me, I'm sort of chuckling because a couple of weeks ago we was at a leader retreat for the leaders of the Mankind Project, and we were really taking a deep look on how do we make this process more robust of becoming a leader and staying a leader. How do we do that? And so we were getting really into it, like this is the values of the organisation. This is how it needs to be. And one of the other leaders there, he said, "Do you ever get the feeling that we're building our own coffins?" Right?
Yeah, how's that?
And it was like, but that's exactly how it should be. That's exactly how it should be. Like if we're really looking at the values and we're really in leadership, and I believe part of leadership is legacy, then you've got to look at this is the right thing, even if it means there isn't a place for me in the organisation anymore. Which is, I think, what you're talking about. Like my role is to get this to a level where you don't need me.
Yeah.
And if there's anything else in there where you're like, let me keep a little place for me, you're not a leader. You're a manager. You're trying to find a job for yourself. You're an employee.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think things like values are really important, because they should exist beyond. They should either liberate or limit decision. Because it shouldn't be the values should be able to answer the decisions.
Yes.
Should we do this or that?
Yeah. You can always
And
consult values.
it shouldn't be an opinion. It should be, well, what does the values say?
And
all right.
If we go beyond that, so it's not because that could be an extra layer, right, of decision making, and we've got to consult our values too now, right?
Yeah.
But if we use values to hire, right, if we're using the values to hire, so we're making sure that people who are aligned on the organizational values are employed by the organization, then it can be an intuitive process. Then that's when we tap into the stuff with the Mankind Project. It's about feeling.
Yeah.
Does this feel right? If you've got a room full of people who share similar values and understand the vision that is born of those values, then we should be able to feel the right way forwards.
Yeah.
And that's when decision making can become faster, more intuitive.
Yeah.
Is this employee the right employee? Yes or no? Is this business partner or this deal a good deal for us to be doing or not?
Yeah.
So it can help us with the decision making, especially with that decision making fatigue that can happen. We've got to keep making choices.
Yeah. And that's also where it can become tricky, can't it, too? Because especially like when things are, I know this from when I was starting up stuff myself. It would be much easier to kind of make the good decisions, stay in line with my values, when it wasn't the salaries are due soon. The salaries are
Right,
due
yeah,
soon,
yeah,
right? You know, like, and
yeah.
so it's not quite right, but
Need them up.
he's going to pay fast, you know. So do we do it? You know, it does become complicated, and that's why I think it's one of those things that if it's when it's smaller, if it's aligned with the values of the person, then that's so much easier, because if they're a person of character, they will probably stick with their values, unless it gets really. I mean, we're hands up. I'm possible making really grave errors when I'm desperate. You know, that's normally when I make my errors. And
At the extremes of stress.
at the extremes of stress, and I think that's where having not just values but more people entrenched in the values it makes the decision making easier, because it's not landing on one person and their desperation,
Yep.
or their inspiration, or their, you know, whatever can make us go and do different things.
Well, I guess that's another thing that it can do, right? It builds trust, right? So if you have shared values, you have vision, it's that clarity of understanding. It changes the culture of the organization, how relationships work, because there is that understanding, there is that knowing, right? That thing that I had in Spain where people understood me. Okay, yeah, Dan's just going off on one.
Yeah,
He's actually a good guy. I know him. Yeah, he's like, it's all right. He's just going off on one again.
yeah,
You know, yes, it upset me, but it's okay. Yeah, he doesn't mean it.
it will be all right.
He'll be all right.
Yeah,
But you can get that hopefully without the upsetting part, right? So you get that understanding, and that's one thing we created really well within the team at Severn, was this great connection between the team members, a genuine connection, a genuine interest, and what that meant, seeing it, was that we all mess up, we all make mistakes, right? But do we fear telling people about our mistakes, or are we happy to share because we know everyone's going to jump in and help me fix it?
yeah,
If you're afraid of sharing your mistakes, the team, everyone doesn't learn from the mistakes. Nothing changes. But at the same time, it can grow and become worse, right? And so what I found is that we can innovate faster. We can be more intuitive. We have more trust between the team. And that, the decision making can be faster, right, as well, like we said before. And so all of that can deliver on those short-term goals. So this is almost a counterpoint to the idea of we've got the wage bill to make. It's finding the balance, right? When do the values come in? When do they become a priority? Bills need to be paid. But maybe values and things like vision can deliver the short-term results that the business need. I think there's that stat. I think it's about 18% or 28% had an 8 in it. Low tens. 18 or 28% of employees believe in the values and vision that the organisation espouses.
yeah. Well, I mean, half of that is to do with communication. Half of that, you've probably been in so many vision setting things for organisations. I mean, sometimes that is so piss poor at the start that it's like, let's just go through it, get it done, get it up on the website, and now we can go through. So one of the things that I like looking at with people is, and I learned this from the Mankind Project, where in the Mankind Project, you develop like your mission, your life mission, and you look at the shadow mission. You look at, okay, when I'm defaulting, when I'm desperate, when I'm not at my best, what am I actually doing, right? And I think that's almost as important for organisations, really, because sometimes that's actually what's happening.
Yeah.
You go, oh, we're here, we're looking at, we're a diverse organisation and we want to make the world a better place by bringing people together. And you go, what's the organisation really about? It's about making as much money as we possibly can for the board, and then fuck off the rest.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like,
screw
them in as we can, pull out as much as we can, then we're going to fuck off to the next thing. And, I think every organisation, like every person, has that, right?
Yeah.
Of course we do.
Mission and shadow mission.
Of course, there's a part of me that wants to build things that last and help people and all that, and there's a part of me that yeah, I'd fucking like to nick a few grand if I could. You know, it's like I have to own those parts,
Yeah.
and I think that's the bit with vision is it just helps you own it. It's a memory, it's a check-in board. Are we getting closer to that, further away from that?
Yeah.
You know, and like the thing with the question we often ask in the Man Comrade is like, is that the man you want to be? That's almost like, is this the organisation we want to be? And you talk about how it becomes a fast way to make a decision. That's probably the fastest way to make a decision, is to go, does this decision take me, does it take our organisation closer to the sort of organisation we want to be, or further away? If it's further away, it's got to be a hard no,
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah.
If it's closer, yeah, and sometimes that will be the bottom line. You know, sometimes it's like, is this taking us closer to the organisation we have to be? Well, we desperately need to get a couple of $100,000 in to keep going.
Yeah.
So I would say it's a yes,
Yeah.
right? Because we ain't going to exist without it. So, all right, it's not exactly what we would want to be involved with all the time, but it keeps us going.
Keeps us going.
And that's like life, isn't it? Sometimes you're like, I really want to be a painter, but I'm going to have to go and sweep those floors for a while because the bills need paid.
Yes. Bit of personal leadership.
Yeah.
I had that plenty of times. This whole idea here, and tapping into what you said about legacy as well. You know, it's a bit of the so Simon Sinek and the concept of infinite games, and we're always trying to fight. You know, ace the quarter, ace the year, and we're trying to win.
Yeah.
And win in a finite way, there's a win and a lose.
Yeah.
But in an infinite game, there's no winning, and so there's no real winning in business.
Yeah.
So it becomes, if we think about things in a longer term, it is about legacy. And this is where that I struggled initially with the value of it in the short term, because if we're thinking it's legacy, it's long term, it sounds long term.
Yeah.
How does that help me today? How does that help me deliver today? And I think in today's world, like, authenticity is key. You've got to, everybody's bullshit detector is really quite fine tuned.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we look at the values things on the walls of most business and go, yeah, right. You know. But so if that's the case, if we do it, if we're genuine about it, if we're real, and we really mean what we say, we have integrity behind our values and our vision, then we're something.
Yeah, and it's almost like you have to do that now. It's almost like you have to do that now. It's not just like, can we? It's almost like you have to, because we're everyone's so exposed.
Yeah.
You're going to have to keep your values. I was reading Stephen Bartlett's book the other day, The Diary of a CEO, The 33 Rules. And he was talking about when he had his marketing company in Manchester. And he said, it was sort of earlier Web 2.0 kind of time, and he was out, and he was looking at he got a couple of big jobs with big companies, and they didn't want to do social media at all. They're like, we don't want to do social media. And he was like, why not? And he was like, because we don't want to create a space where people can come and complain.
Right. Yeah.
Publicly. We don't have to create so they didn't get involved in it, and of course then they got screwed over, right? Because that's where you had to be.
Yeah.
And that's where, your vision, mission and values not being something that's just a poster on the wall and something that everyone lives is how it has to be now, almost. It has to be.
Yeah.
Otherwise you get the sort of, I think it was Alicia Keys who, she got a deal with BlackBerry to try and save BlackBerry.
Right.
And she tweeted about the BlackBerry deal and how she was happy to be a part of it. But of course, it had on the bottom sent from an iPhone,
Yeah.
right? That was like the really early days. And of course, so it was a massive failure, you know, like iPhone used it to their advantage, of course. But there's a sort of good example of what you're saying not matching.
Yeah, actions not matching your
Words, not matching your mission and everything you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Which today is really important, I think, in another sense. So that idea of influencers, right? So influencers, I think influencer marketing's perhaps moved on, right? And for influencers, celebrities to be involved in selling a product, it needs to be genuine, right? They need to really be connected with it. I was having this conversation with somebody who runs celebrity alcohol brands. Like he's the alcohol guy, and then he brings in different partners, and so he's got like 10 of these different brands.
So they like white labelled most of those celebrity.
This guy has, that's who he
Right,
does.
okay.
Yeah. So he's a partner for celebrities who want to launch their spirits brands or whatever.
Gotcha.
Right? So he's working with in the UK, and yeah, it's for him. He's got this. So he's incredible. He's got a lot of data on it and what works, what doesn't work. And it's for him, it was all about their real engagement. They need to be a certain type of person who will really engage with it, who's really interested, who has something to say. They need to have an authentic connection to the product that they're creating and launching. You can't just take a random person who's got a large following and stick them and expect it to sell. It's just not going to work.
Well, I was reading a thing about Snapple.
Right. Yeah.
Recently, and I remember Snapple really well because they kind of sponsored one of my friends when I was at I studied at Goldsmiths and in the 90s, and one of my friends he had an exhibition on at the time, and he was like, do you know what, I'm sick of people coming to exhibitions and everyone being drunk. He was like, I don't want people looking at my work, they can't even remember my work. So he wrote to Snapple and said, like, would you kind of sponsor my event for these reasons? And we were living in a shared student house in New Cross, and the day he got this letter saying yes, we also had this lorry turn up, and we basically had like a house full of Snapple. I don't think they realised what size sort of event it was. This student event. We literally had thousands of bottles of Snapple in a fridge, and so anyway. But I was looking up Snapple, and they had a really clear vision of how they were going to do things. They wanted to be the global local drinks company. So they started out of New York. They done sort of independent shop distribution first. So you small shops, no supermarkets, all of that. And they had this woman, Wendy someone, I can't remember her name, she was like the face of it. And it felt...
Is she the one on the bottle?
I think she may have been. I think so. Wendy something her name was. Anyway, so she was the big thing. And then Quaker Oats, I think, bought them out for $1.5 million or something. And 18 months later, sold them for 500 million.
Wow.
Bought them for $1.5 billion. They lost a fortune on it because they came in straight away. They changed the distribution. They kind of shut on all the smaller people, just took it straight to supermarkets. They fired her. They got rid of the woman who was the face of it. They just moved away from...
They lost all the authenticity.
They lost all the authenticity. And that's what everyone liked about it. It was like, was it the best drink? Was it? Who knows? But it felt authentic. And suddenly it was like, oh, it's not. It's been bought by the same people who do Gatorade, and it's just in the supermarkets now. And I think that sort of happened to Prime.
So it's
recently.
stripping out salt.
Yeah.
Effectively, stripping out the authenticity and just going for scale. So it's back to the same leadership approach of just going for the numbers. Right? This is how you scale the business. We know how to make money. We're just going to scale this in the way that we scale everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's a classic example, isn't it? Obviously, Quaker Oats were like, these are great.
Yeah.
We know how to do this better. Let's just buy them and do it.
Stack them
and the audience were like, well, no.
Yeah.
Because that's not what we do.
Yeah, it's not what we're about.
It's like, as obvious, I'm a big, I really like Supreme. I really like Supreme clothes. And they recently got bought out, and
I didn't know that.
they got bought for $1 billion. a few years ago, 2018 or something, and it was the big luxury company that has Louis Vuitton and all those guys. They bought them, and they've sold it again recently for a loss, I think, to my company names are escaping me, but the big company that own all the sunglasses brands. They own most of the luxury sunglasses brands. Yeah, they've bought it. They bought it, and you know, I have concerns about that because I'm like, Supreme is known for edgy designs, limited numbers. You know, like even though it's big scale worldwide, they'll probably do 20,000 of one shirt, which worldwide ain't a lot. So they sell out within minutes.
Yeah.
So how do you scale that up?
Yeah.
Like, I can't see how you can scale it up much bigger than it is without it suddenly becoming like super dry or something. And it's in every airport.
Yeah.
At which case, anyone who's into it goes, well, it's super dry now. I don't want it.
And, you know, to be fair, for everybody else, you know, it's a white T-shirt with a red logo on it.
Yeah.
Like, why would I buy that over something else? It's because it has meaning.
Yeah, whereas to the people there, it's like 1994, New York City, skateboarding.
Yeah. That's
what it was.
Yeah.
And that's what that logo means.
Yeah.
How long they can hold on to that, I don't know.
That's going to be an interesting journey to follow. Indeed. Yeah, so it's about, so here, then we've gone to then, perhaps, you know, so we talked about, you know, the vision, values, helping leadership make decisions, move forwards, create plans, but then there's employees and how we work together as teams, but then there's also customers and the authenticity of the organization actually driving sales.
Yeah.
Like creating something that is authentic, that people can relate to. But that's just human. So I don't like the word authentic because I've been saying it for 15 or so years, you know, and everybody says we've got to be authentic, But it's really about being, maybe it's back to your point at the start. It's about being you. And so is leadership perhaps about having the courage to, really know yourself and then to put who you are into the business.
I mean, I think it has to be, especially nowadays. I mean, if you're looking at even at socials, across social media, like, you know, I think it's Elon Musk has got something like 100, maybe 1,000 times more followers than Tesla on his socials. Same as Richard Branson. He's got so much more than Virgin, because people are not, people more than ever, I think, are looking for human story. That's what we relate to. We always have. And so, you know, at that stage, if you're taking leadership to that level, then your personal leadership values become so much more important. Because if your leadership, if your company's values, and you go, right, I'm into ethical sourcing, right? And then the next thing, you're on holiday and you're drinking something that isn't in some place, you know, you're eating a panda burger somewhere or something, you know what I mean? Like, it's going to do you a lot of damage. So I think we're coming much more to the place where those, in terms of your leadership, you lead in a style that is true to you, and making sure that that runs out into the things you've found become incredibly important. Yeah. But also, going back to your original point, it becomes important even in terms of hiring. Because if you're hiring a senior exec and their values are not aligned with your values, truthfully, they can say it, but they don't live it. How long till that gets exposed?
How long till that leads to burnout?
Yeah, because you,
whatever, like they're trying to pretend. Yeah,
James Hollis, who is I think he will be seen as the sort of Carl Jung, Freud of this period. He's a great mind, and he has a quote where he says, "We spend so much time for love and affection, bending ourselves into shapes that we are not, that one day we look up and we don't even know what shape we could have been.
Oh, yeah.
And if you think of that in the context of what shape you're going to bend yourself into for the job,
Yeah.
right? And what shape is the organisation going to bend itself into just because we want this particular, you know, character cult leader, for want of a better word, right? We want this star.
Yeah.
What shapes are we willing to bend ourselves into? And how long can we stay in them?
Yeah.
Because at some point something gives.
Yeah.
And these are the times where when that thing gives, it's hard not for it to be exposed.
Yeah. Indeed. The bending into shapes, it was a visceral feeling.
Yeah.
I felt, you know, trying to be something, trying to be, you know, when values aren't aligned, it's just how much energy goes into that.
Yeah.
How much energy goes into maintaining pretense.
And I think that, you know, like going into that point, one of the things you'll hear said a lot is that, like, connection is the antidote to addiction.
Yep.
Right? So to me, that means if you look at it the other way around, and you know, I'm just looking at it from the point of addiction being a particularly destructive personality trait that can happen. Mm-hmm. If you say that that connection is the cure for addiction, then I'll take that as meaning on some level, disconnection is the cause for addiction. And I'm starting to think more and more, the biggest disconnect that creates addiction is when I'm disconnected from the person I could have been.
Yeah, and bent into the wrong shape.
When I've bent myself for survival, for all the different reasons that we bend ourselves into different shapes. And we have to, we all have to survive at some point. We have to bend ourselves into different shapes. At what point, you know, I think in the worst way, we stay in that shape and it leads to dysfunctional things like addiction, failure, you know, all those things. And if we're lucky, we come to a stage in our life where we go, whether through inspiration or desperation, where we go, all right, I have to now try and bend myself back into the shape I could have always been.
Discover the shape.
Discover it, find it, try and bend myself into it. And, you know, this thing I think that's often called the sort of midlife crisis, I don't think it is. I think it's like a great big retune where we go, yeah, what shape could I have been?
I don't know who came up with the marketing of that, the transformation, but it, you know, naming it a crisis just makes it into something negative. Right?
Yeah.
This is an opportunity for you to sit back, look at where things are and where do I want to go.
Yeah. I was watching a thing with Steve O from Jackass.
Yeah.
And he said something that I thought was great, where he said they were talking about his addiction, his brusque with death and mental health issues and all of that sort of stuff because of his addiction. And he said, yeah, and he said, and in a weird way, we're the lucky ones. He said, because if you've gone into addiction and survived addiction, then you've probably had to go through either the 12-step process or some form of process. He says, so you've been forced to take that deep look at your life and that deep dive and to work out that shape, and worked for years to try and get yourself back in that shape just to stay alive and survive. But you have done it.
Yeah.
Whereas if there isn't that,
yeah,
it can at worst never come.
So, you know, similar process, different angle. One of the psychologists that took part in the Boarding on Insanity documentary that I was part of. One of the things he said, I don't know if it was in the film or in one of the round tables, was that people with deep trauma, right, or trauma from, in this case, boarding school, have a shortcut to wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that's hard to understand. You know, it's not to dismiss or to downplay the trauma itself, but I guess this is, if it's hidden, if we hide it and we hide those things and we squash things down and pretend that everything's normal.
Yeah.
Right? We pretend, especially in the workplace, we're going to the workplace and pretending our life is perfect, and we assume that everybody else's life is perfect. Everybody else has got their shit together, right?
We're all in the same game of pretending.
Yeah. And we know that my family life is batshit crazy. Like, it's wild and ridiculous, and it's chaos out there. But I go into work and I'm pretending that, like, I've got my shit together.
Yeah.
And that, for some reason, there's that focus group of one thing again. It's that I'm assuming that everybody else, therefore, has their shit together as well. And so things fall apart.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's pretending all the time. That's that energy. That's the shape.
So one of the great things actually about being in recovery and being open about being in recovery is that what happens is you start off and you think, oh God, everyone's going to think I'm this weirdo, right? Because I've got to say to people I don't drink anymore because I was an alcoholic, right? But what actually happens is you go out and you go, I don't drink. And people say, oh, you're just taking a bit of time off or anything. You go, no, actually, I used to be an alcoholic, right? And much more than rejection, which is what you think you're going to get, you get, yeah, I'm probably drinking a little bit too much recently. Or, yeah, I often think, can I have a conversation with you about that? And you find that actually it creates connection rather than rejection. It creates the connection. And I think bringing this back to the sort of leadership thing and that idea of being an authentic, for want of a better word, leader, those vulnerabilities become massively important. I heard a word for it the other day. There was a word for that thing where it was some Japanese name, I think it is. There was a there was some big thing and they asked, what happened here? It was a pilot. I think it was a Japanese pilot who crashed a plane. And there was this big inquiry. And they said, why did you do this, this and this? And he said, I just fucked up. And at the time, no one really knew how to handle this. They thought it would be, they were getting ready for this man to say, well, there was this technical thing with this, and he was just like, I just fucked it up.
Yeah.
Like, just literally fucked up. And they were like, well, what can we do with that then? It's sort of over. Yeah. And I mean, in terms of authentic leadership, what permission does that give to other people, for example, in your organisation? If they go, why did you do that? It's just a fuck up.
Yeah.
I just thought it'd be a good idea and it weren't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's that permission, right? Creating permission for people to own things, get support, feel safe, feel comfortable. Feeling good in a place. I mean, it goes. Imagine that for me, that visceral feeling I had of being bent out of shape.
Yeah.
Pretending to be in a shape, just to compare to being in a place where I feel comfortable. So, all in all, wrapping up.
Yeah.
There's plenty here, right? plenty to get into, but there's vision, values, being ourselves, connecting with ourselves. Helps the team, helps ourselves, creates authenticity, engagement, creativity, innovation. Yep, most organisations aren't doing it.
Yeah. And I think it's also how you get, it's bottom line, a lot of people will be watching stuff like this, I think, I've often been in a position where I'm watching stuff around business and corporate stuff and all of that, because maybe things ain't working out quite how I want them to be. So I'm watching them. And the thing that used to frustrate me is it'd always be like, things were going terrible and we was down to our last million and we didn't know. And I'd think, what the fuck? Like, I've got nothing now. I'm trying to find some tips here, that actually have value. And you've probably got people watching this who are like, great, vision, mission, values, all that stuff. But like, when your back's against the wall, how much does it really help? And I think back to a photographer friend of mine who I used to know, and he weren't going through a great time. And he said, photographers are like cowboys. he's like, if your back's in the corner, I've just got to come out shooting, you know. And to me, I kind of took from that was, I've just got to do what I do really well. You know, that's my way.
Yep.
Just that's because that's what I am, that's what I do. Let me just keep doing it well.
Be true to yourself.
Be true to yourself, and so I think it can help you when your back's against the wall, because the problem with decision making is we think of decisions as choices. Should I do this? And when you're in trouble, that's what you're thinking. But a decision comes from the Latin root of incision and to dissect. It means to literally cut off. To decide means to cut off. So the word decision means to cut off every other possibility. It doesn't mean pick. And we're there thinking, oh, it means I should weigh up and should I do this one? That's why we get stuck. The word decision just means that one.
Yeah.
And so how do you make that one quick? Well, you make it by what's the right thing to do for us right now. And I also believe, especially in business, when you track back most of the biggest failures, most of them don't come back to a wrong decision. They come back to not having made a decision quick enough.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's how, in real terms, vision, mission, and values help, because they should speed up the decision-making process.
Cut off everything else that doesn't serve us.
Yeah, right now.
Thanks. Awesome.
Cool.
I think that was great.
Yeah.